Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. We are here for episode 4 of Finding the Pieces podcast. Thank you all for joining me today. I have an amazing guest with us today. She is a mom of a newly diagnosed special needs child. Her name is Amber. Say hey, Amber.
Hi, guys.
All right. So I've brought Amber on today to share her story. She is a mom of 2, and her son was just recently diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So we want to hear a little bit about your son. Tell us your process of getting his diagnosis. I heard it was a little difficult. Explain that to us.
Yes, so when he was around 15 months old, we definitely noticed that he was slacking in his verbal skills. It was our first notice was how much he lacked to be able to communicate with us. He only could say around 2 words, and at that
Sure.
point it was mama dada.
Okay.
So we went ahead and spoke with a pediatrician, and they started the process of speech, but that ended up taking about 4 months to get him entered into that. After the third month of him being in speech, he had added about 10 words to his vocabulary,
Okay.
but the speech therapist had noticed that he tiptoe walked, and when she would do something he really liked, he didn't flap per usual. He likes to stem. We call it his crabby stem.
Okay. So he used his hands different, but he's still stimming. Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So she introduced us to a coworker of hers who did OT, and he started OT. As he did OT, they noticed a lot of his behaviors with transitions matched a lot of what could fall into either category that we now know he has both, and offered to get us into an early intervention program. So he went to service days 2 days a week and ended up with an IEP for his schooling. Through that, we decided to go ahead and take the OT's words kind of to heart and just take the jump to see about getting him evaluated, because over time, a lot of his actions were changing due to the fact his environment had changed with going to a school where there's other kids involved. He
Okay.
still he very much lacked the social interactions with the other kids.
So how was that transition going to school for him? What did you notice changed in his actions, and or was it just more prominent that you noticed
It
when he was around other kids?
Very much so, because we had always noticed that he didn't like to play with his sister,
Yeah.
but we assumed it's the age gap because there's almost 4 full years in between them. She's a girl, she liked her Barbies and whatnot, so we just
Right, right.
assumed it was the differences. But when he got into that environment, he began to parallel play with the other little boys that were also in there. He didn't interact with them. He wasn't forming real connections with the teachers.
Okay.
So it was a lot of lack on his social end. He started that almost 2 years ago,
Okay.
and it has taken from then till 3 weeks ago to get his diagnosis after 3 evaluations, 2 of which were not with psychologists. And
Okay.
here we are now.
So what do you think caused that really long gap of getting an official diagnosis? Because it seemed like you were kind of on the right track. You had these speech therapists and occupational therapists giving you hints of his behavior. You were obviously noticing it as a parent and had your concerns. So when it came to getting that diagnosis, what was really dragging it out? What was making people think that he didn't need any more intervention than you were like already giving him?
He, when he started speech, his verbalization came along very quickly. So as he became more verbal, everybody's thoughts about his evaluation and his development backslid, in the sense of, never mind, that's not the case anymore.
Okay, so they're just assuming that whoever you went to was assuming that because your child was verbal, they were just not autistic, which is
Yeah.
not that's not really a realistic um uh evaluation there, because there's a lot of children and people with autism who speak well. Yes, there's a good percentage of them that start out nonverbal and then, like, develop speech. Like, my
Right.
daughter, for instance, was nonverbal, and I don't even consider her fully nonverbal now, even though she can't have a full back and forth communication
Right.
like me and you are right now. Like, I'm saying stuff, you're saying stuff, and we can chit chat back and forth. Madeline can't really do that still, but now she can say phrases and a few sentences, and definitely has a wider range of words available to her expense. Does she always use her words? No, but it doesn't mean she doesn't have them. When she's in the right environment, when she's in the right moment, and can connect the word to what she's wanting or what she's needing, it'll come. But she wasn't always like that, you know.
Right.
There's some kids who do still develop the speech, but they have still the autistic behaviors that still could affect them when they get older, as far as socializing, functioning, maybe having a job, or maybe even just those social cues in general. Like, he might be able to speak well, but he may not, as he becomes an adult, fully understand like people's sarcasm, their body language, spatial awareness. Like, Madeline, she struggles with spatial awareness. She won't get close enough to, shake somebody's hand, and that could seem offensive to somebody who doesn't know. Or maybe she gets too close and touches people without their permission, and that can be like, "Oh, why is somebody touching me?" You know?
Right.
And see, and that can cause issues for them in the future, because we do all have like a sort of social standard when it comes to speaking and meeting and doing things in real life and everyday life, like being at the grocery store or a job. And he's gonna need help with that, regardless if he can say words or not, you
Right.
know? So did you just get other references? Is that the direction you went? You kept pushing and deciding to try somebody else's professional opinion?
Effectively, we continued to have reports of, "Oh, well, in certain settings, he did better." So we had tried an in person eval. And at the time of the eval, I didn't know the term masking.
Yeah.
And so by the time we got the second eval, we did a video call where she just sat up and was able to view him in his own comfortability of being in the home. And she was able to pick up on everything. So she was able to be like, well, this could have very well been a case of, he's going out in public. He knows from being in a school setting, we mask, we put it on, you do the best you can.
Mhm.
He wasn't um he wasn't a big flapper stimmer, which is what we were continuously told. He doesn't self-harm. He doesn't publicly stim consistently. He's verbal. He's very smart. He knows his colors and his letters and his numbers. So we don't know what to tell you besides he might have ADHD, but you can get that diagnosis in 3 to 4 years.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. So there's this gap in diagnosis, because I will say, from my personal diagnosis experience, we had people to tell us to not get Madeline diagnosed, even though we had the assumption, and we had people tell us that it was very obvious she was probably also autistic on top of her Down syndrome. They said, per like the school system, to not have a dual diagnosis, and because they wouldn't know what to do with her. And I thought, well,
Right.
that's really interesting, because if I don't have the diagnosis, how can I help her? Because if she's not just a child with Down syndrome, then she's just going to keep being treated like she's a girl with just Down syndrome, when there was
Exactly.
obviously other behaviors that were affecting her daily life severely. Because of course, a child with Down syndrome is going to have delayed speech. They have a delay in a lot of their milestones. They do stuff slower. They do have just the mental delay in general, where it just takes them longer to learn and it takes them longer to progress. But most people with Down syndrome still progress just like everybody else. It's just a
Right.
slower process. So she was still going to be able to function like everyone else, live a life, have a job, all of those things. But what we noticed was, okay, well, she's not making eye contact. She's not responding to her name. She's not developing any like words. She just still babbles. Like you were talking about just the babbling there for a long time, no response to verbalization. So when I would say something, she wouldn't say anything back. It was almost like I wasn't there. And the stimming, the stimming was she would not play with others, like how you're talking about. There was no play, there was no interaction, there was just stimming. And it was her own stem. Madeline's never flapped her hands either.
Mhm.
Madeline's never flapped her hands. It was always like an obsession with something shaking in front of her face. So she would literally sit and pull a string like out of a blanket to shake it. And oral stimulation, everything went in her mouth. So
Yeah.
even though her criteria, of course, doesn't exactly boop, 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 all the autism things, we still knew that there was autism present because it was affecting her daily life, her throwing behaviors and her stimming and her non-communication. So we had resistance too, and they told us to not get a diagnosis at all. But we got to think too, like in school, like you said, you're really seeing it present when he's in school. And I feel like if a teacher or whatever doesn't know and is not aware of a diagnosis, how are they going to be able to approach? How are they going
Right.
to be able to modify the schoolwork for them in order for them to learn effectively? You
Right.
know, Madeline wouldn't participate in class because, like you said, she would just kind of sit and stim, and she wouldn't participate. And so, if she was treated just like a child with Down syndrome and not have her autism diagnosis, it would just have been totally overlooked, I think.
Right.
And so it seems sort of like a similar case for you in the way that your child could speak and maybe they didn't have dot, 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 every little thing a certain way. Because stimming's not just this hand
Exactly.
flapping motion. That every kid stims differently. Body rocking, Madeline body rocks a
That was
lot.
a spinner. He likes to spin.
Nice. That's a good one. I feel like that's a fun one.
We have had the sit and spin till it's just about broken now.
Yeah, 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 Madeline's bed, we have to get her, like, a new bed every few years because she'll rock so hard sitting on her bed, she shifts the bolts,
Oh yeah.
and it's crazy how strong they are, and when you don't realize that repetitive motion, it's almost like how water runs rocks smooth. An autistic person can do their motion so repetitive that it will wear something down.
Absolutely. And I think that was another thing that definitely hindered our diagnosis was he was a sensory seeker and they were looking for him to be overstimulated all the time versus he likes to jump, he likes to spin, he likes to line all his stuff up, he likes to throw things just to get that out.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be quite a big hindrance for us is well that lines up with ADHD, but we try not to put that label on a child until they've hit the age of 6 or 7 and they're out of that toddler stage.
Sure. In which I mean, like, I understand from, like, these therapists and doctors and stuff's, like, perspective, you don't wanna give somebody a diagnosis that's not actually there.
Right.
Because, it may limit things that they can do, or maybe they end up having to do therapies and stuff that's not necessary and can cost the family, like, money and time. You definitely don't wanna be walking around with a diagnosis that doesn't actually affect you. That would be like going to the eye doctor and getting glasses, but you can see. You
Right.
know you
Right.
know? So I do like, I understand their perspective of, like, really making sure, but at the same time, I feel like some of the therapists and some of the facilities out here who diagnose should have a little bit of a broader view of the symptoms,
Exactly.
because 'cause they're not all gonna look exactly the same. Not no nobody's the same, and so no kid's gonna act the same, which means no child with special needs actions and mannerisms and behaviors are gonna be the same.
Absolutely.
I think, but most definitely if it's affecting how they learn and how they interact with others, that could be a hindrance in their adulthood, which is
Right.
which is what the importance of that early intervention. So were you able to get what you felt like you needed out of that diagnosis, or have you still felt like you had to fight?
We're still fighting, and
Okay.
it's very much a battle with the school now.
Mhm.
Of we have this diagnosis, we have all of these therapies and or adaptations that the psychologists and psychiatrists would like, but because of school versus private, how they look at how they can help a child, it's, well, the school has done everything they can, we can't do any more adaptations for him. For our standards, he does not need speech. For our standards, he does not need OT. He does not need a TA. But mom gets phone calls every day. He's linebackering kids just because he needs that outlet.
Mhm.
And my biggest reasoning for pushing so far ahead with his eval is he got a stigma while in his early intervention program as a bad kid. And that was my fear of, well, his behavior and his social interactions are not lining up to where they need to be. And this teacher, and now the new teacher, it's flat label. That's a behaviorally bad child.
Mhm. And see, that's what I've noticed with a lot of, and you know what? For some reason, it's particularly boys. It seems to be boys who struggle the most with, they're mislabeled as just aggressive, bad behaving kids versus a child that's struggling, and doesn't have the abilities at the time to regulate their emotions and overstimulation, which can get better with time. It can get better with therapy. It can get better with early intervention. But when they're first starting out, like Madeline she couldn't regulate herself. I've
Mhm.
noticed that she masks a lot now, when before she didn't know how to mask. She didn't know how to control or soothe herself, and she would just break down. Now when she has meltdowns, I find that they're in a more, private place. She'll wait till we're in the car. She'll can wait until we get home or we get away from people. So now it's not so much in public. She can manage it. She'll manage, she'll deal, and then it's once she feels like she's in some kind of safe space, she's gonna let it all out. And we've had to have a nice 20-minute car ride with screaming the whole time before,
Yeah.
and I think I think there's this misunderstanding with boys because boys, they're born with testosterone. They naturally have a little bit of a more aggression. That's how men are. They're going to be a little rougher. They're going to be a little dirtier. They're going to be, and I think they easily just jump to the conclusion of, oh, well, this kid's he just misbehaves. There's not an underlying cause. And that's what I found I've always had to fight for with Maddie was finding the underlying cause of why she's doing something so that I can help her out of it or help her regulate it. Because obviously I can't make her stuff completely go away, right? Like
Right.
we may not ever be able to make our kids' behaviors completely go away, but we can help them manage and I
Mhm.
think manage them and like control them a little better. And that's what I think the school system really lacks. They do
Absolutely.
their best, but yeah, what I see a lot is moms complaining about their kids, their special needs, their autistic sons being sent home due to their, like, aggressiveness or their meltdowns or their behaviors, and obviously, the school is trying to keep everyone safe, that's great, we don't want other children getting hurt, we don't want them hurting themselves or teachers or staff or other children. Of course not. At the same time, now we're limiting their ability to learn. Their
Absolutely.
you know, which could be something you may have to also fight for in the future. Because if you're already getting calls about his behavior, you know, and they're just like, "Oh, we don't know what to do. We're
Right. And
gonna send him
that's,
home." Have they sent him home yet?
no, thankfully, to my
Good.
knowledge, they cannot send him home from pre-K unless it's a dire situation.
Mhm.
But we definitely noticed, so he does have almost like a caseworker that
Good.
comes in from the early learning program because of his familiarity with her. They didn't want it to be a very harsh change. But we've noticed that if she's there and he can focus with somebody one on one, he does a whole lot better. So that's why right now our biggest focus is to try and fight for a TA or possibly take a step back, think about homeschooling, more one on one approach somehow.
Sure. Yeah. What do you think as far as a mother's perspective on a mother's instinct? What do you feel like might work best for him? Because I think everybody juggles that decision as a parent, and not everybody has the convenience of homeschool. But then also at the same time, not everybody has the convenience of being able to deal back and forth with the school system if their kids constantly being sent home. So what would you advise, or what do you think is gonna be a direction you may go towards?
As of right now, because as moms we always fight ourselves over what is going to be the correct decision, we've put our foot down to give it a good 30-day try. If we see no improvement, if we see regression in the next 30 days, due to his birthday we get a little luck there to where we could actually take a step back and have him at home with me for an extra year before he would have to start kindergarten. So
Okay.
then we could get both perspectives without having him miss anything.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's, yeah, that's a big plus there because he wouldn't be behind if you did decide to pull him, and then maybe if it didn't work in the homeschooling atmosphere or something, you still have the
Right.
opportunity to let him go back. That's really good. That's awesome. Yeah, I will say that didn't really work out for us in the long run. I don't look down upon like the school system. Again, they do their best. It just in Madeline's particular situation, I feel like because your child is so young too.
Right.
So he has like a long way to go before you're going to see before you could really, I guess, more or less have like a chart you could go by, like,
Yeah.
of like progression or regression. You have some time to really work that out. Madeline started a pre-K and then had regular kindergarten and a regular education system, and was put in the special education class. She had an IEP set up. Now, of course, when you're first put into that, I know from my perspective, that's the first time I've ever dealt with an IEP. So I think parents really, really need to do their research on IEPs and making sure that that IEP is set to correct standards, because I was a little oblivious. I was not educated enough in that realm to be able to advocate properly for my child. And so that's where on my end I lacked. Um so for you and any other parent in the audience, understanding what an IEP is and how much control you have over that IEP as a parent is super crucial to making sure that it's set up the right way for your kid. I did not know this, and until we were about 4 years in with really no progression, it was just these horribly depressing meetings with teachers who were just saying, she can say one of these words out of 5 words. She still needs assistance to the bathroom. She can copy, she can echo, she needs hand over hand. There's no like real positives to it. That you're literally sitting in a meeting constantly just kind of being told everything that your child can't do based on some trial and error. Okay. And I feel like kids with autism are so highly sensitive to their surroundings, to the people that they're around, that there will be times where they are going to be more communicative and more willing to do for one person than another. And that doesn't mean that they don't have the ability. It means they maybe feel more comfortable, or they're able to engage easier with this person and this person's energy and the way they present it versus this person, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you're not aware of who all is interacting with your kid and how they respond to it, or how they are giving them the speech or the occupational therapy and stuff like that, you could constantly end up getting negative feedback, which was what was happening to us. Until we realized that they were only doing about 15 minutes or so once or twice a week of speech. And at this point, Madeline is nonverbal. So when she first started school, she didn't have any speech at all. And, but on the criteria, she was doing like an hour of math and an hour of science and an hour of history. And so once we really got into it and dived deep into the educational IEP part, we realized, well, how is she doing all this math and science and history and all of this? And she's not able to be tested, but she's only getting 15 minutes of speech, when the speech is the most important part, because how can you learn if you can't communicate, ask questions? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So there were like pivotal points in that IEP and in the education system that were kind of just being looked over. And it was just like everything that's on paper is just, it is what it is. And they wouldn't test her. They said she was incapable of testing. So if we have a special education system and we have IEPs put in place, how do we not have modified versions of tests either? So that's something that you may run into too. You may say, they may come to you with like, well, his behaviors are preventing him from being able to sit down and take a test. And then you're not going to have a grade. You're going to have these average goal scores, but for the longest time, because I didn't understand the IEP, the scores weren't being added up correctly. So then I didn't even have that either. Another thing that they prevented from, I don't know why they didn't tell us this, but there was always this fight for speech and for communication with Madeline, because she couldn't talk. And we didn't know if she ever would. And so we were trying to figure out, how are we going to get her to talk? Because I started with sign. The school system didn't want to use sign because ASL is not commonly used in the English language. Like they said, because the majority of the population doesn't use sign language, that they don't teach sign language. Okay, so they wanted to use pics, but the pictures would make her frustrated. And they would state that in the IEP. They're like, she doesn't like the pictures. So then it's like, okay, well, is there another avenue that we can go down to teach her speech? And there was just nothing until I fought and had to go and get an advocate and all of this stuff for her educational needs. Did they tell me that she was approved for an AAC device? That took 5 years. So she went the whole 5 years of school, kindergarten through 5th grade, until I was told that she was able to have an AAC device. So I advise every parent when they're starting out in the education system to make sure that they are standing up for their kid, like what you're doing. Stand your ground, understand the IEP, understand what therapists are being used. Even if you're being denied certain therapies, you still have the right to get those therapies outside of the school system.
Absolutely.
So, like, if they're not getting enough speech or they're not getting enough OT, whatever the case is in the school system, you do still have the right to go outside of there and get those therapies outside of school. But I feel like in your case, it can probably go either way when it comes to staying in the school system or homeschooling. We did end up choosing to homeschool due to lots of factors, not just the couple of things that I mentioned there, but there was lots of factors that had us to homeschool. And I will say the plus sides of homeschool comes with, they're in a comfortable environment. They are with people who can positively support their activities of daily living. So Madeline, a lot of Madeline's IEP is her activities of daily living. Her getting dressed and brushing her teeth and bathing and eating and communicating. And I will say she has advanced tremendously in her speech and in her actions since she's been homeschooled. And I test her like my other kids. It is just modified. We take longer to test, and I limit like what she can see of the page so that it's like not overwhelming, if that kind of makes sense. So
Yes.
there's ways. There's ways that you can test what they know and what they don't know. Has she ever passed? No. But I did learn something about my child, is that she likes what she likes. So, like, she loves milk. And if one of the answers is milk, regardless of what the question is, she's going to pick milk. She doesn't care. That's the answer to everything. So,
You gotta love it.
yeah. So, but it looks like you're set up good for him now. I just hate how long it took Do you think that's affected him in any way, being able to having that delay in that early intervention and with the school system and stuff? Or do you feel like you're kinda still on the right track with him?
I think as far as his speech goes, we were great. We hit it dead on the head being the first thing that we got done. As far as OT, as soon as he was in the school system, they gave him 1 year of it. Just like you were talking about the IEPs and being uninformed, they removed it. I did not know until this upcoming year, and there's no OT. So he has regressed to the point that, just like with Maddie, a lot of his IEP is acts of daily living. He's still not potty trained. He can't dress himself. He still needs assistance with certain silverware to be able to feed himself. There's just a lot of that yes, at 4 years old, kids still need assistance, but this almost reminds me of a 2 year old, and it makes me feel like, man, if we would have worked harder at what we knew was there in the beginning, we wouldn't be in the position that we are now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely felt like it was, even though I felt like we made the best decision to homeschool, there was this like pull on my heart. Like, man, I feel like I lost so many years there were years wasted that her intervention could have been better. Like, it could have been better. We could have done things faster. And I felt like nobody was listening to me. Nobody was hearing me. And it's so frustrating. It's super frustrating. But
Absolutely.
the good news is you can get him caught up. You can. It's just really paying attention to that IEP. Don't be so focused on the like education part, because like I said, it's gonna have like it's gonna say like math and science and all this stuff. And yeah, like you go to school to learn how to read and write and do math and all that stuff. That's what we went to school for. But when you have a child that has some type of disability, mental, physical, something they're born with, something that's developed over time, whatever it is, some of those educational necessities do need to just kind of be set aside until they can get their milestones worked out. And it sounds like he's still trying to get his milestones worked out of like those basic needs. Like, we can't be worried about what 5 plus 5 is if we can't feed ourselves,
Right.
right? Like, so, and that was the way it was with Madeline. She couldn't toilet herself or dress herself, but we're doing an hour of math a day,
Absolutely.
like, and this is when, because see, your son is still pretty young, but with the age that I'm talking about, Madeline going through this, she was 6, 7, 8 years old, like
Right.
way above where, yeah. So where my daughter is like 7 physically, she was still mentally too. And that's what you don't want to happen. That's
Right.
is that probably like sort of that fear you're carrying around as a parent, is that you're going to keep seeing him grow and the age mentally is not going to follow?
That's been one of my absolute worst fears, because as a mom of more than one, I get to see my daughter blossom, and it feels like I'm watching my son just settle into place, and it's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I've had to watch Ellie, who is younger than Madeline, go just hop right over her. Just literally like she's just over here and Madeline's still here, which me and Ellie talked about in the last episode of how it was hard for her to kind of almost be leaving her sister behind mentally. Ellie noticed that she was more advanced mentally than Madeline, and that took a toll, that played a role in Ellie's development. Do you notice this in your daughter, who your daughter is older than your son,
Right.
but I'm sure she's noticing that he plays and interacts and communicates differently than she does. Has she brought it up to you?
Absolutely. And I can say, in her being the older sibling, she takes the more protective side. When we're out in public and she notices the stares or the mumblings around us, as far as we've even had people come up and ask us inappropriate questions. And she very much is This is my brother. He is who he is. Leave it alone. Don't ask him questions. Don't look at him.
Yeah.
And it almost, as a mom, makes me feel guilty of you should just be able to enjoy your sibling and not have to worry about almost playing second mom because you feel as though you have to protect him at all costs because he's not at that level to do that yet.
Yeah, and they end up taking on a level of stress that's not really permissible to them at the time.
No.
They're too little to have to handle any of that emotional baggage that comes from caring for another person. They're a child themselves, and all of that we feel like should go on to us, and I think that's one thing that some parents don't realize is happening to their kids. They'll say, "Oh, the sibling is jealous," or, "Oh, the sibling is overreacting to to the sibling that has special needs." And it's like, I don't think a lot of parents really take the time to see that they're seeing what we're seeing. They're living what we're living with this child. Their actions, their mannerisms, those behaviors affect not just the parents and the child with special needs. It's affecting all of the people around them. And it's definitely included. Those siblings are included in that. They will be affected, and in some cases, positively. Like, it sounds like your daughter is positively, and in some aspects that she's, protective. So she obviously loves him very much, wants to keep him safe, but, of course, at the same time, as a mom, you're like, "I don't want you to feel like you have to protect him. You shouldn't have to defend him. You shouldn't have to be stressed that he's gonna get hurt," you know?
Right.
And it's hard that's a hard part to take on as a mom because I felt that mom guilt with Ellie a lot. It is, it's a hard thing to take on. Ellie would express some stuff, but not always. And you said your daughter's 8?
Mhm.
Yeah. So they are a bit of a distance apart. So I can see how she would want to take on that mom role. Has she ever expressed to you that it's hard, or has she ever asked you questions as to why he does act the way he does?
Absolutely. Especially probably for her starting as young as about 5.5, 6. Mommy, why can't he play with me? Mommy, why can't we go to the pool? Why can't we go here? She doesn't understand why she can stay with certain family members and he can't because they don't have the capabilities to be able to understand and deal with him in the same capacity they can her. And it was really hard for her to understand that he had to do a lot of things differently. Mom, why can't he just stay home with us? Why are we going to therapies? Why are all these doctor's appointments happening? And it was a point where I just had to sit her down and finally explain it to her. And she's still young, but I thought she was at a point around that 6 year age that she would be very understanding. And it was at that time that we really noticed her take on that protective role over him of, okay, he is different. This is something he was born with and he can't help it. And I'm going to keep him safe no matter what.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. That's amazing that she took that on immediately. I'll admit that it took Ellie a little longer. It took Ellie a little longer than an immediate reaction. She kind of regressed with some anxiety first before accepting that her sister was going to be different than her. And there were even times years later, after explaining the diagnosis multiple times, Ellie would come to me and say, "I wish Madeline was more like me," And it's hard to hear. It is, but Madeline's the way she is for a reason, and your son is the way he is for a reason. And I think that as Ellie grew to understand that we can't change her. This is your sister, and it did start to teach her things, and Madeline started to teach her things. And after she kind of got out of the anxiousness and the fear of her sister swallowing stuff and breaking things all around her, she realized that she could be the person to help her in some aspect. But yeah, not every kid will just take it on, you know and roll with it and just understand. Let's say date.
I'd like to say that she understood and it was just scot free from there.
Mhm.
She understood and every day is a hit or miss with her. It's always that back and forth of, yes, I'm going to protect him with my whole life at 8 little years old, but I'm also just like Ellie, I'm going to ask mom, "Hey, why can't Bubby play sorry with me? Why can't he play these board games? Why can't he learn? Mom, is there a way you can help me break this down to him? I want to be able to play with him."
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It is truly heartbreaking to have to look at your other children that are dying for this life just like we did as parents,
Mhm.
that they thought was going to happen, and they're watching milestones which makes them proud, but in the same sentence it's not the same way they look at everybody else with their older or younger siblings.
Yeah. And I think that is why community in like this whole disability community is so important. You wouldn't believe what really helped my kids was connecting with friends who had similar family dynamics as we did. So, for example, I have a friend whose son has autism. Madeline and him are friends. She has a daughter who is not special needs, who doesn't have autism, has become friend, and it's just like a similar age to Ellie. And so they have a good friendship and a relatable connection because not only can they connect as friends, as girls, that whole thing, like on a normal, typical level, but they also connect with the fact that they both have a sibling with a disability and they can share that. They both have a similar understanding. And so then what happens is you don't have the one friend over here judging this friend's sibling with special needs. Well, why does your brother throw that? Or why does your sister act that way? And then makes them not want to play with them. I don't know if
Right.
you've ever noticed that, or maybe if you've ever went on a play date with someone that doesn't have a special needs kid, you have two typical kids that want to play with each other, but then one of them doesn't want to play with the typical child or starts to get a little distant because of the way the special needs child acts. And they have
Yeah.
to also come along with the typical child. So you kind of run into that. And so that's another reason that I wanted to create this podcast. I wanted moms and families to be able to connect and find similar family dynamics so that we can all like help each other when it came to the resources, the connections, the similar stories. This journey feels lonely. I know you probably can agree. It feels
Yeah.
like you're just fighting the good fight all by yourself. It's like, but there's many others out there who are walking the same walks that we're walking, living the same lives and having to make these same hard decisions every day, that we are. And it's encouraging. It encourages me to hear your story and how relatable it is, even though it's on sort of different planes. We have like different diagnosis and stuff. It's still very much the same, and we still have very similar feelings towards our kids, towards all of them, special needs or not. I think as parents, we're not only trying to fight for our special needs child, but we also still do have to kind of fight for those other kids to be seen and heard that's in the family, in this whole dynamic because we're all on the journey together, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think connecting families with similar dynamics where the sibling understands. Her Ellie's friend will be understanding and just totally not concerned that Madeline threw that cup across the room because she deals with that at home, and so it doesn't bother her. You know what I'm saying? It's like they get it. They get it. And there's like this whole little group of kids I think that just need to get together and be like, "Yeah, we have brothers and sisters with special needs." And it's not so bad and we all are living the same life and it's fine, you know? But yeah, the hardest part is getting to a point where you can see progress.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're starting to see progress, but you probably are feeling the sense of being in the early stages of more things you're going to have to go through and more hard decisions that you're going to have to make. But you're doing all the right things. You're an amazing mom. You're doing all the right things, even though there are nights where we probably sit and cry in the shower.
Definitely.
Like just am I good enough? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing for my kids? And am I making a scene or whatnot. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we have to put our foot down and kind of create a scene, I think, for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you shared your story with us today. I'm glad you shared your son's journey. I'm so glad that he finally did get his diagnosis and you're coming onto the right track of getting him all the assistance that he needs. That's so amazing. Hopefully, it will encourage other parents who maybe have also just got a similar diagnosis that, they they weren't in the wrong for pushing and being repetitive or getting other opinions from other doctors or other specialists. You have to just keep going until you feel you're on the right track. And that's exactly what you did. And that's so amazing because it's not easy. It's not easy to do. It's this whole thing that you're having to do outside of like your, regular work and pay your bills and just being a basic mom. You're doing this whole other thing.
Yes.
Has anybody, like, how do you feel about support for you? Do you feel like you've received any support on top of or after getting that diagnosis?
I would say community wise,
Mhm.
there has been quite a few people reach out, but I can definitely say as a mom along the journey, and I'm hoping I'm speaking to somebody else who has dealt with this, especially when you have a verbal and or masking child, that it's not always able to be seen on the outside, that you're going to lose friends. There's going to be people that act like they understand, they act like they're okay with you. But the moment you really start pushing, really start advocating for your kid, and they might start to see a little bit of that behavior shine through, you're alone.
Mm,
And it got very lonely for a long time. But
yeah.
it was very much as soon as we got our diagnosis, it was like a wave of community outcry.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. I think us moms have to really stick together and be supportive of each other. I have noticed that there has been some negativity around the autistic community for whatever reason. I think there's this odd debate on just random things that I don't even think really matter, we're
Right.
all on this like similar journey, and I think we all need to be positive and supportive of each other, regardless of how severe or non severe maybe the child is. This is not a competition as to who has a bigger load to carry.
Absolutely.
In reality, none of us want to carry this load, whether it's a
No.
small one or a big one. I think if we could take it and set it down, any of us would, but we can't. We're in this and we're all just taking it head on to the best of our ability. And I think we all need to stop judging each other, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why are we judging each other's journey, you know? What works for you may not work for me. What may not work for me may not work for you or people get mad with unsolicited advice now. And I think we're all just trying to help each other. We'll reach out and say, "Hey, can you give me some advice?" And then somebody wants some advice and they're like, "Oh, how dare you?" Either take it or leave it.
Right. Help
We
is
don't
help.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with trying to help.
Right, right. The journey's so broad and we're all going to see different variants of it. And so I think we need to just throw all the judgment out the window because we're all just doing our best. We're all just surviving here in this realm, you know? And, because that is what it feels like sometimes. Like, I'm on this, like, fictional journey in a realm of, because nobody else really understands unless they're there, unless they're living it and they're walking in my shoes. They're not gonna see the reality. The reality is hard to watch. That's one reason why, like, a lot of Madeline's social media is more along the positive aspect. I don't video Madeline's meltdowns. I don't video her those hard parts that, yes, I do wish people could kind of see the reality of is going to break her privacy, you know?
Yes.
She can't tell me, "Hey, I don't want people to see me like this." She can't tell me that. So I'm not gonna breach personal boundaries with my child who can't communicate those things to me, and I don't need to. I don't need to. And other parents, if they are able to to show some of those hard moments to spread awareness and you're comfortable with that, and your child may be able to verbalize that they're comfortable with that, by all means, awareness is awareness. Uh, but I just really think that the judgment, regardless of how hard or not hard things are, needs to go, and we all just need to be supportive of each other because that's what we really need. We're getting all this therapy and all this help and all these doctor's appointments and things lined up for our kids. And at the end of the day, who's checking on you? Who's asking you if you were okay? Because you're the one having to process all that information. You're the one having to hold your kid when they're melting down. You're the one who had stuff thrown at you today. And at the end of it, who's
Oh,
there
yeah.
to be there for you? And it's gonna have to be us other moms.
If not, we're
Stand up.
just all sitting here holding our own hands. My favorite thing my mom ever taught me is we're all moms in the trenches making the same mistakes on different days.
Amen. That's exactly what it is. But yeah, you're doing all the right things. You're not alone. And I appreciate you for coming on the show today. I love your story. You're very inspiring and you're a very strong woman. And you continue to fight the good fight, Amber, okay? I
Thank
really,
you. I
I
appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. All of the people in the audience, I'm sure, will be helped by hearing your story today. Thank you. We are concluding our episode 4 of Finding the Pieces. Thank you all for joining us. If you sticked around long enough, please like and subscribe to the channel so you can hear more and receive more content. We're going to give a small shout out to the Moser Family Farm Central Railway. They are located in King, North Carolina. They have different farm animals and celebrate birthday parties for kids, and they're extremely inclusive of the special needs community. So if that's something that you're looking to get into, check them out. And if you have a small business that you would like to shout out, just send me a link and I'll shout them out. I appreciate you all today. I hope everyone has a wonderful and blessed day. See you later.